It had been one of those weeks when everything seemed to stretch out endlessly, as if time itself conspired to remind me how routine my life had become. I was 32, working long hours in a consulting firm, waking up to the sound of my phone alarm, scrolling through endless emails, and trying to convince myself that this was the life I had once wanted. There was money, stability, and the kind of respect people nodded at in business meetings, but deep down, I couldn't shake the emptiness that clung to me like a second skin. Most evenings ended with me pouring a drink alone in my apartment, staring out at the city lights as if answers were hidden somewhere between them. I wasn't lonely in the conventional sense. I had friends, colleagues, occasional dates, but it had been years since I'd felt the sharp thrill of truly connecting with someone. I'd forgotten what it meant to feel seen. That Friday night, everything began to change. I wasn't supposed to be out. My plan had been to stay home, maybe order food, and unwind with a movie. But my best friend Daniel called me at the last moment, insisting I join him for a drink downtown. He didn't take no for an answer, and part of me suspected he knew I needed a push out of my comfort zone. The bar he picked wasn't anything special. Dimly lit, low music, the kind of place where people gathered to escape the noise of the city rather than amplify it. The air smelled faintly of citrus and whiskey, and the wooden tables gave it a rustic charm. I spotted Daniel at the far end, waving at me with a grin that said he was already 2 drinks ahead. "You finally made it," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "I was starting to think you'd bail again." "Almost did," I admitted, sliding into the chair. "But here I am. Don't make me regret it." We exchanged the usual banter, caught up on work, and ordered another round. And then, just as I was starting to settle into the easy rhythm of the night, I noticed her. She walked in like the night belonged to her, shoulders straight, eyes scanning the room with a mix of curiosity and confidence. She wasn't flashy or overdressed, just effortlessly striking. A fitted black dress hugged her figure, her long dark hair fell over one shoulder, and when she smiled at the bartender, something in the room shifted. Daniel must have noticed the way my gaze lingered, because he nudged me with his elbow. "Don't stare too hard, man. You'll scare her off." "I wasn't staring," I lied, though my eyes betrayed me by finding her again. She took a seat at the bar, alone, and for a moment, I debated whether to ignore the pull I felt. I wasn't the type to approach strangers easily. Years of calculated, measured moves in my professional life had seeped into my personal habits. But something about her presence dismantled my usual hesitation. It was as if the monotony of my days had been cracked open by her arrival. When she glanced my way and caught my eyes, I felt a jolt of adrenaline. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, it was the spark in her expression, the almost playful way she held my gaze before looking away. Daniel smirked. "Well, don't just sit there. Go say hi." I sighed, half annoyed at myself for even considering it, half thrilled at the possibility. Before I could overthink, I excused myself and walked over. She was stirring her drink slowly, her nails painted a deep red that matched the boldness in her eyes when she turned to me. "Hi," I started, my voice steadier than I felt. "I couldn't help noticing you seem a little too interesting to be sitting here alone." Her lips curved into a subtle smile. "Is that your opening line?" "Depends. Is it working?" She laughed softly, a sound that disarmed me. "Maybe. But I should warn you, I usually see through lines pretty quickly." "Then it's a good thing I'm terrible at them," I said. "I'm just a guy who thought it'd be a mistake not to at least say hello." Her expression softened, and she extended her hand. "Sophia." "Ethan," I replied, shaking it. Her grip was firm, her touch warm, lingering just long enough to send an unexpected shiver down my arm. We talked. At first, it was the safe topics: work, the city, favorite places to eat. But with each exchange, the conversation unfolded into something richer. She was 27, a graphic designer who had recently gone freelance. She spoke with passion about her projects, about colors and ideas and the freedom of creating something out of nothing. I found myself leaning in, caught in the rhythm of her voice, the way her eyes lit up when she described something she loved. It had been years since I'd listened to someone like that, not out of obligation, but because I genuinely wanted to hear every word. Hours slipped by unnoticed. Daniel eventually left with a wave, but I hardly registered his departure. At one point, she tilted her head, studying me. "You don't strike me as someone who goes out a lot." I chuckled. "That obvious?" "Not in a bad way," she said quickly. "You just seem more like the type who thinks too much. Like you carry a lot in your head." She wasn't wrong, and the accuracy of her observation startled me. Maybe. Or maybe I just needed the right company to drag me out. Her smile deepened, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes: interest, curiosity, perhaps even attraction. As the night wore on, the bar emptied, leaving only a few scattered patrons. She glanced at her phone, then back at me. "It's late," she said. "I should probably head home." Disappointment tugged at me, but I nodded. "Of course. Let me walk you out." Outside, the city hummed softly around us, neon lights reflecting on rain-slicked streets. The air carried that cool, lingering freshness after a light drizzle. She stood there for a moment, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I had a good time tonight, Ethan." "Me too," I said. And I meant it more than I expected. There was a pause, the kind that stretches with possibility. She bit her lip lightly, then smiled. "You're not as terrible with lines as you think." Before I could respond, she leaned in and pressed a quick, gentle kiss to my cheek. It was innocent, but the warmth of her lips lingered, igniting something deeper inside me. "Good night," she whispered, then turned and walked toward the row of waiting cabs. I watched her go, the faint trace of her perfume still in the air, and for the first time in years, I felt awake, truly awake. Something had shifted. And I knew, instinctively, that this was only the beginning. The following morning, I woke up with a lingering smile I couldn't quite shake off. It had been months, years, really, since I'd gone to bed replaying someone's laugh in my head. I could still hear Sophia's voice, light and teasing, still feel the brief touch of her lips against my cheek. For once, I didn't wake up thinking about deadlines or client presentations. I thought about her. By noon, I'd convinced myself it wasn't foolish to reach out. I'd asked for her number before she left the bar, half expecting her to politely decline. Instead, she had given it to me without hesitation, her handwriting neat and curved on a napkin that I'd carefully folded into my wallet. I texted her, "Hey, Sophia. Last night was great. Can I take you to dinner this week?" I tried not to stare at my phone, but every buzz made my chest tighten. It took her only a few minutes to reply. "Dinner sounds good. Tuesday." Just like that, it was set. Tuesday evening, I found myself standing outside a small Italian restaurant tucked away on a quiet side street. It wasn't the kind of flashy spot you'd find on social media. It was intimate, with dim lighting, soft music, and the smell of garlic and fresh bread spilling out the door. I arrived early, nerves buzzing through me like static. I hadn't felt this nervous since my 20s, and it was ridiculous. She was just a woman, I told myself. But deep down, I knew it wasn't true. She wasn't just anyone. When she walked in, I forgot how to breathe for a moment. She wore a simple navy dress that fell just above her knees, paired with a light jacket. Her hair was loosely curled, framing her face in a way that seemed effortless. She spotted me instantly, her smile genuine, and I stood up to greet her. "You look," I stopped, realizing any adjective I could think of sounded inadequate. "Incredible." Her cheeks flushed slightly, though her smile turned playful. "You clean up pretty well yourself." We sat, ordered a bottle of red wine, and slipped into conversation as if we'd known each other for years. She told me about her latest design project, branding for a small coffee shop, and I admitted how much I admired the freedom of her work compared to the rigidity of mine. "It's not all freedom," she said, twirling her fork. "Sometimes it's long nights, endless revisions, and clients who don't know what they want until they see it. But I love it. It feels alive." There was passion in her voice, and it drew me in even more. At one point, she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You know, I almost didn't go out that night. I was planning on staying home with a bottle of wine and Netflix." I grinned. "Guess we both had the same plan." "Funny how things turn out," she said softly, her eyes locking onto mine. The moment stretched, charged with unspoken energy. We ate slowly, savoring not just the food but the presence of each other. I noticed the little things, the way she laughed with her whole face, the way her fingers brushed the rim of her glass, the way she tilted her head when she listened. When the plates were cleared, we lingered over the wine, neither of us wanting the night to end. "Do you want to walk a little?" I asked finally. She hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "I'd like that." Outside, the city felt quieter than usual, the streets lit by the golden glow of old-fashioned lamps. We strolled side by side, our shoulders brushing occasionally, sending sparks through me each time. After a few blocks, she slipped her arm through mine casually, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. My chest tightened, warmth spreading through me. "You're not as serious as I thought," she said suddenly. I glanced at her. "Serious?" "Yeah. The first time I saw you, I thought, here's a guy who probably plans everything, lives in spreadsheets, and never does anything spontaneous." I laughed. "That's not entirely inaccurate." "And yet," she continued, her tone teasing, "you did walk up to a stranger at a bar. That doesn't sound like spreadsheets to me." "Maybe you're bringing out a side of me I'd forgotten existed," I said before I could stop myself. She looked at me, her expression softening, and for a moment, silence said everything words couldn't. We ended up by the river, the water glistening under the lights. She leaned on the railing, her hair falling forward as the breeze carried it across her face. I reached out instinctively, brushing it back. Her breath caught, just slightly, but she didn't pull away. Our eyes met, closer now, the space between us electric. I hesitated just long enough for her to tilt her chin upward, her lips parting. The invitation was clear. When I kissed her, it was slow, searching, as though both of us were trying to memorize the moment. Her lips were warm, soft, tasting faintly of wine. She pressed closer, her hand curling around the back of my neck, pulling me deeper into her. The world around us faded, leaving only the two of us under the city lights. When we finally pulled apart, She rested her forehead against mine, laughing softly. I don't usually do that on a first date. Neither do I admitted, breathless. But I'm glad we did, she whispered. We didn't rush to say goodbye. Instead, I walked her to her apartment building, a charming old brick structure with ivy climbing the walls. At the entrance, she paused, looking up at me with a mischievous glint in her eyes. Would you like to come up? For a heartbeat, I froze. The temptation was sharp, immediate, but so was the awareness of what it might mean. I didn't want this to be something careless, something rushed. I wanted her, yes, but I also wanted the connection to last beyond a single night. I'd love to, I said carefully, but maybe not tonight. Her brows lifted slightly, then she smiled, as if she understood exactly what I meant. Good. You passed the test. I laughed. Test? Yeah. If you had said yes too quickly, I might have thought you were only after one thing. Trust me, I said, brushing my thumb gently across her hand, it's not just one thing. Her smile turned tender. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Sophia. She kissed me once more, lingering this time, before disappearing into the building. I walked home feeling lighter than I had in years. The days that followed were a blur of anticipation. We texted constantly, our conversations playful and sometimes flirtatious. She had a way of slipping between wit and vulnerability, making me want to know her more deeply with every exchange. By the time our second date rolled around, a Saturday evening spent at an art gallery she loved, I realized something undeniable: I was falling for her. I hadn't planned it, hadn't expected it. But Sophia had walked into my carefully ordered life and turned it upside down. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to put it back in order. Our second date at the art gallery had left me thinking about Sophia for days. She had a way of pulling me into her world, showing me the colors and textures of her mind as if each painting was a doorway into how she saw life. I realized then that I wasn't just attracted to her beauty, but to the way she lived, with curiosity, with a kind of raw honesty I hadn't let myself feel in years. By the third date, I wasn't even pretending anymore. I wanted her. All of her. That Friday evening, she invited me to her apartment for dinner. I'm warning you, she said over the phone, her voice playful. I'm not exactly a five-star chef. But I make a mean pasta. Pasta sounds perfect, I replied. Besides, I'm not coming for the food. There was a pause, then her low laugh. Careful, Ethan. You might make me blush. I arrived at her place carrying a bottle of wine. Her apartment matched her perfectly, stylish yet warm, full of little artistic touches. Abstract sketches framed on the walls, shelves cluttered with design books and small plants, a record player humming soft jazz in the corner. She appeared from the kitchen wearing a loose white shirt tucked into dark jeans, barefoot, her hair tied back casually. The sight of her like that, relaxed, at home, was more intoxicating than any dress she could have worn. You're early, she teased, though her smile betrayed she didn't mind. I didn't want to risk missing a second, I said honestly. Her eyes softened for a moment before she gestured toward the kitchen. Then you can help me chop vegetables. No free rides. So we cooked together, laughing as I clumsily sliced peppers while she moved around the kitchen with practiced ease. At one point, she flicked a bit of flour onto my shirt, smirking when I looked at her in mock offense. You're enjoying this too much, I said. Maybe, she admitted, her grin playful. Dinner turned out simple but delicious, and we ate by candlelight at her small wooden table. Conversation flowed effortlessly, as it always did with her, but beneath the words was an undercurrent, a growing tension, unspoken but undeniable. Every brush of her hand across mine, every glance that lingered too long, every pause in the conversation where our eyes locked, it all built into something I could feel in my chest, in my pulse. When we finished eating, she leaned back in her chair, studying me with that same mischievous glint I'd seen before. "So," she said slowly, "what happens now?" I raised a brow. "What do you mean?" "Well," she said, standing and walking around the table until she was beside me, "usually after dinner, people either say good night, or they don't." Her tone was playful, but her meaning clear. I stood too, facing her, the air between us charged. "Which one are we?" Her lips curved into a small, daring smile. "I think you already know." And then she kissed me. It wasn't the hesitant kiss from our first date. This was hungry, insistent, full of the tension we'd both been holding back. My hand slid to her waist, pulling her closer, while her fingers tangled in my hair. The world around us blurred as the kiss deepened. She pressed against me, and I felt the heat of her body through the thin fabric of her shirt. My pulse quickened, every nerve alive. She pulled back just slightly, her lips hovering against mine. "Ethan," she whispered, her breath warm. "I've been thinking about this all week." "So have I admitted, my voice low, almost rough. Her eyes searched mine for a moment, looking not for desire, but for reassurance. When she found it, she smiled softly, and the last of her hesitation melted away. She took my hand and led me toward the couch, where the candles flickered shadows against the walls. We sank into the cushions, still kissing, still exploring each other as though time had stopped. I traced my fingers along her arm, her collarbone, the curve of her back, memorizing the shape of her. She responded with quiet gasps, with soft laughter when I teased her, with a growing urgency that mirrored my own. It wasn't just passion, it was intimacy. Every movement felt like both a discovery and a confession. At some point, the music shifted, a slow, sultry tune filling the room. She leaned back, her cheeks flushed, her lips swollen from our kisses. "Dance with me," she said suddenly. I blinked, caught off guard. "Dance?" "Yes," she said, tugging at my hand. "Come on. No excuses." So we stood in the middle of her living room, swaying to the music. Her head rested against my chest, her arms looped loosely around my neck. I held her close, inhaling the faint scent of her perfume, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against me. It was strangely more intimate than kissing, this quiet closeness, this vulnerability of moving together without words. "You're full of surprises," I murmured. "So are you," she whispered. When she tilted her face up to mine, I kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. The rest of the night unfolded in a blur of warmth and closeness, whispers, laughter, lingering touches that grew bolder as the hours passed. We didn't rush. We didn't need to. The spark between us had caught fire, and we both knew it was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke with sunlight streaming across her living room, the faint scent of coffee drifting in from the kitchen. Sophia was humming softly as she moved about, her silhouette framed by the glow of the window. I sat up, running a hand through my hair, and couldn't help but smile. She turned, catching my gaze, and grinned. "You look like someone who just discovered mornings aren't so bad after all." "Maybe," I said, stretching. "Depends if every morning starts like this." She rolled her eyes playfully, but I could see the flush of happiness in her cheeks. As she handed me a mug of coffee, I realized something I hadn't let myself feel in years. I wanted this. Not just the attraction, not just the passion, but the connection. The quiet mornings, the shared laughter, the way she made me feel alive again. And though neither of us said it yet, I knew it. Sophia wasn't just a fleeting spark. She was the fire I hadn't known I was missing. The weeks that followed our night together blurred into something that felt almost unreal. Sophia and I slipped easily into a rhythm: late-night dinners, weekend walks, stolen kisses in quiet corners of the city. Every time my phone lit up with her name, my chest tightened with anticipation. I hadn't felt like this in years. Maybe ever. But love, if that's what it was beginning to feel like, has a way of testing itself. And sooner or later, the cracks begin to show. It started small. One Thursday evening, I was running late from work. A client meeting had dragged on far past its scheduled time, and by the time I checked my phone, I had 3 missed calls from Sophia. When I finally arrived at her apartment, she opened the door with her arms crossed, her expression carefully guarded. "You're late," she said simply. "I know. I'm sorry." "Work. Work," she repeated, her tone sharp. "It's always work, Ethan." The words stung more than I expected. "That's not fair. You know I didn't plan for the meeting to run late." She sighed, rubbing her temples. I made dinner. I was waiting. And you didn't even text." Guilt pressed down on me. She was right, I could have at least sent a message. But part of me bristled at the accusation. "I can't just walk out of meetings, Sophia. You know that." "I know," she said softly, her anger fading into something else. I hate feeling like I'm not important enough for you to make time for." Her vulnerability disarmed me. I stepped closer, taking her hand. "You are important. More than you know. I'll do better, I promise." She searched my eyes for a moment before nodding, though the tension lingered like a shadow neither of us could shake. The shadow grew. Sophia was passionate, spontaneous, fiercely independent, but that independence came with insecurities I hadn't expected. She didn't say it outright, but sometimes I caught it in the way her voice faltered when she asked about my past relationships, or in the way her gaze lingered when another woman glanced at me in public. One evening, as we sat in her apartment watching a movie, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly, then put it face down. "Who was that?" I asked casually. Her shoulders stiffened. "Just a friend." Something about her tone, too quick, too dismissive, sparked a flicker of unease in me. "Male friend?" I pressed, regretting the words even as they left my mouth. Her eyes narrowed. "Yes, Ethan." "Is that a problem?" "No," I said quickly, but the air had shifted. She sighed, pausing the movie. "If we're going to do this, you have to trust me. I'm not going to explain every text or every call. That's not who I am." "I do trust you," I said, though part of me realized I sounded like I was trying to convince myself as much as her. Her expression softened slightly, but the silence that followed wasn't the comfortable kind we'd once shared. It was heavy, full of unspoken doubts. The real breaking point came a week later. We were at a bar with friends, Daniel among them, and everything was fine until Sophia disappeared to take a phone call. She stepped outside, her voice low, her back turned. I tried not to watch, tried not to assume. But when she came back inside, her smile seemed forced, her laughter just a little too bright. Daniel leaned in, murmuring, "You okay, man?" I nodded, but inside, my thoughts churned. Later, as we walked home, I finally asked, "Who was on the phone?" Sophia glanced at me, frowning. "Why?" "Because you were gone for 15 minutes. And when you came back, you acted like everything was fine, but it wasn't." Her eyes flashed. "You're keeping track now? Timing my phone calls?" "That's not what I meant," I said quickly. I need to know if there's something going on." She stopped walking, turning to face me. Her voice was sharp, but beneath it I heard hurt. "Something going on? Do you seriously think I'm cheating on you?" I froze, realizing how my words had sounded. "No, I didn't say that." "But you thought it," she said bitterly. "God, Ethan. I let you into my life, into my home, into my bed, and this is what you think of me." Her eyes glistened, and my stomach twisted. "Sophia, wait. That's not what I..." But she was already walking ahead, her shoulders rigid. That night, I lay awake in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the argument. I hated myself for doubting her. I hated that I'd let insecurity creep in, poisoning something that had felt so pure. But beneath the guilt, there was also fear. Fear that maybe we were too different, her spontaneity against my caution, her fire against my restraint. Could we really make it work? 2 days later, she showed up at my door. I opened it to find her standing there, hair tousled, eyes tired but determined. "We need to talk," she said. I nodded, stepping aside. She walked in, crossing her arms, as if bracing herself. "I don't want games, Ethan. I don't want jealousy or suspicion. If you can't trust me, then this won't work." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and it broke something in me. "I do trust you," I said, stepping closer. I'm scared. Scared of how much I feel for you. Scared of losing it." Her eyes softened, and for a long moment, she just looked at me. Then she whispered, "Then stop pushing me away. Because I want this too. More than I expected." I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly as if letting go would mean losing her forever. We stood there in silence, the weight of our fears between us but also the strength of something deeper. That night, we didn't talk much more. We didn't need to. Instead, we held onto each other, clinging not out of desire alone, but out of something stronger, an unspoken promise to fight through the cracks together. For the first time, I realized love wasn't just about passion or laughter or sweet mornings. It was about facing the shadows too. And praying the light would be strong enough to survive them. After that night in my apartment, when Sophia and I clung to each other in silence, things didn't magically become easy. Love never works that way. The doubts didn't vanish overnight, the insecurities didn't dissolve. But something had shifted, a choice. We had decided to keep fighting for each other. The following weeks tested that decision. Work grew busier for me, and Sophia took on a demanding new project that consumed her energy. There were late nights, cancelled plans, moments of frustration where old insecurities tried to resurface. But each time, instead of retreating into silence, we talked. Sometimes clumsily, sometimes through tears or raised voices, but we talked. And slowly, we learned how to bend without breaking. One Saturday afternoon, Sophia suggested we get out of the city. "Just for a day," she said, her eyes shining with that playful spark I loved. No phones, no work, no distractions. Just us. So we drove out into the countryside, winding through rolling hills until we found a quiet lake surrounded by tall trees. The air was crisp, the water shimmering under the sunlight. We spread out a blanket, shared sandwiches we'd packed, and lay side by side, staring up at the endless sky. It feels like the world stops here, she murmured, her fingers brushing against mine. Maybe that's what we needed, I said softly. She turned her head to look at me, her expression serious now. Ethan, when I met you, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to care so much, to let someone in this deeply again. It scares me sometimes. Her honesty struck me. I reached for her hand, holding it firmly. It scares me too. But maybe that's how we know it's real. Her eyes glistened, and she leaned in, kissing me gently slowly, like it was both a promise and a confession. That evening, as the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, Sophia rested her head on my chest. Do you ever think about the future? She asked quietly. All the time, I admitted. And, do you see me in it? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Every version of it? She let out a shaky laugh, a tear slipping down her cheek. Good. Because I see you in mine too. In that moment, I understood something simple but profound. Love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about avoiding conflict or never feeling doubt. It was about choosing each other, again and again, even when it was hard. Sophia wasn't just the spark that had lit up my empty life, she was the fire that kept it alive. Months later, we were back in that same Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. Sophia was wearing the same navy dress, her smile as luminous as that night. But this time, I wasn't nervous. This time, I knew exactly what I wanted. When dessert arrived, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her eyes widened, her breath catching as I opened it. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, understated, but meaningful. Sophia, I said, my voice steady though my heart thundered in my chest. The night I met you, I didn't know I was about to find the one person who would change everything. You've reminded me what it feels like to live, to feel, to love. And I don't want a life without you. Will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes instantly, and she covered her mouth with her hand. For a heartbeat, silence stretched between us, then she laughed through her tears, nodding furiously. Yes, she whispered. Of course yes. Relief and joy crashed over me as I slid the ring onto her finger. She threw her arms around me, kissing me with a passion that drew applause from the other diners around us. I didn't care. In that moment, the world could have been watching, and it wouldn't have mattered. Later that night, as we walked home hand in hand, Sophia looked up at me with a teasing smile. Remember when you told me you were terrible with lines? I laughed. I remember. Well, she said, lifting her hand to admire the ring glinting under the streetlights, I think you did just fine. And just like that, the man who had once lived in the shadows of routine, who had forgotten what it meant to truly feel, found himself stepping into a future brighter than he'd ever imagined. Not because it would be easy, but because it would be ours. And that was enough.